a vlog I've wanted to do for quite a while now. It's controversial because it's talking about the sizing or lack of accurate sizing in the independent pattern companies. So if that's something you're interested in, stick around. Do you struggle with indie patterns? Are you a big 4 or big 5 pattern girl and want to transition over to indie patterns? Let's have a look at them together and I'll tell you why I love them and also why I hate them. Hi there, I'm Christine the Gemini Stitcher. Welcome to my little sewing space. Yes, we're going to talk indie pattern companies today. And I'm going to be open and honest about my experience of them. Now, what makes me an expert? Well, I'm not an expert. I've just got a little bit of knowledge up here. I've been sewing since I was 14 years old and I'm now the grand old age of 61. So do the maths. That's a lot of sewing. When I first started sewing, you could only get the big 4 pattern companies. So you had your Simplicity, there was Burda, there was McCall's, and there was Vogue. And they were the patterns that I broke my pattern teeth on, learnt how to use, struggled at times with them because the instructions in those patterns are not the easiest. But there was one thing that you could rely on with those patterns, and you still can today, and it's the sizing. Now, big 4 or big 5 patterns are still available. Their sizing only gives you the garment measurements. It doesn't, your body measurements, sorry, it doesn't give you the finished garment measurements. And there's a reason for that. It's because if you measure in a size 10, then that size will fit you. I'm 99% confident when I pick a big 4 pattern up, I choose a size from the outside packet and it fits. So what's the difference between the big 4 and the indie patterns? Well, indie patterns are a bit hit and miss in my experience. Some of them are very similar in their sizing to the big 4 patterns, and they're the ones that I gravitate towards. However, there are also a lot of pattern companies out there that put the finished garment measurements on. Now, I used to think when I first started using indie patterns that this was a really good idea because it gave you an idea of how loosely fitting or how snugly fitting the garment was going to be on you, or so I thought. So look at, if you're doing an indie pattern and it's got finished garment measurements on, look at the difference between your body measurements and the finished garment measurements, and that'll give you an idea. Well, it'll let you know just how much ease there is in that pattern. And by ease, I mean how the pattern fits. This sweatshirt I've got on is an Anna Rose pattern sweatshirt. This fits perfectly. So how do they manage to do that? It's probably all to do with the pattern block that they're using. And if I'm honest, I think some of them, you'd look at a sweatshirt pattern and they'd have a whopping 5 inches of ease on that pattern. And I just think that's just downright lazy, if I'm honest, because it gives them the carte blanche then to say, oh, take your measurements. This has got 5 inches of ease in, and it's up to you then as the consumer to decide how much ease you want in your pattern and figure out which size you should be sewing. And I think, personally, the pattern company should be doing that work for us. We shouldn't have to figure that bit out. But they do. They get out clauses. Oh, you've got your finished garment measurements. Compare the two and you decide. Now, other people might see it differently and might think, well, it gives you a little bit more scope in the fit, possibly, but if they've done their job properly, the images that you see for that pattern should show you how that pattern is going to fit on you if you take your measurements correctly. And where they've got 4 or 5 inches of ease in them, particularly for a top, I would say they are using you as a guinea pig. It's up to you to decide the look that you want. So the images that you see sometimes aren't anywhere near the fit that you get. So how on earth do you decide which is a good pattern company for you and one that doesn't work? Well, it's a bit trial and error, unfortunately. But a good rule of thumb is have a look at the ease in the garment. If they say there's 4 or 5 inches of ease in something, that a top like this, I would say 2-3 inches absolute tops of ease. If it's more than that, maybe it's not the garment for you. Look at a different pattern company who's got a similar garment but a little bit tighter on the ease, so they're doing their measurements. Or better still, I would always go for the one that doesn't give the finished garment measurements, because my gut instinct is that pattern is going to be very similar in fit to how the big 4 patterns do their fitting, and I'm going to be happy with it. So let's take a deep dive into the 3 pattern companies that I recommend. I use them time and time again. They're all independent pattern companies, and the sizing and the fit is perfect. No scratching your head with these guys. So if you've been struggling with your sizing, I recommend trying one of these 3 pattern companies and let me know how you get on. Do you love them as much as I do? Those of you who've been following me for a while will not be surprised that the first pattern company that I recommend is Itch to Stitch. They are bang on my favourite pattern company at the moment. I've got loads of their patterns and they always turn out perfect. So let's have a look at their sizing, because that's what we're looking at today. Sizing and how they work it out. And does it work? Well, with Itch to Stitch, hand on heart, I can say yes, it does. So their sizing is really good range. It goes from US 00 up to a 40, and that's a really good range. But how do you decide with Itch to Stitch what size you need to make? Because they don't give you the finished garment measurements. They go purely off your body measurements. So the first thing they tell you to do is to determine whether you need a regular or a full bust option for your garment, because the majority of their garments, some of them do individual cup sizes, some of them do a regular or a full bust option. So determine which one you need on your bust before you do anything else. So you measure your high bust and you measure your full bust. So your high bust is underneath your arms and around that level at the back. Now, I recommend measuring your high bust without your bra on. It can make a difference. Then put your bra on that you're going to wear with the garment and measure your full bust. So with Itch to Stitch, if that is within 3 inches difference between the two, they recommend that you use the standard option. If there's more than 3 inches or more, then go for the full bust or choose the cup options if they're available. So they tell you to measure your waist at the narrowest part of your midriff and measure your hips at the widest part over the centre of your derriere. And then you've got your 3 body measurements. They have really good detail on how to grade between sizes, because that's important. Don't just assume if your bust is in a size 8, then 8 is what I need to cut out. Particularly if it's a dress or trousers, you don't need the bust measurements, do you? But if it's a dress, then measure your waist and measure your hips as well, because your bust might be a full bust, your waist in a size 6, your waist might be a size 4. We can all wish, can't we? But you know, you might be. And then your hips might be a size 12. That is your body shape. That is not what the catwalk thinks you should be. It's you. And that is what you should be going off. And use those as your guide. Use their guide on how to grade between sizes, and I'm almost 100% positive you'll get a good result with Itch to Stitch. So that's pattern company number 1 that I totally recommend for being accurate and reliable with sizing and size inclusivity. Pattern company number 2 is one that I've started using recently, and I made their Hazelton dress, and I'll pop the link back to that one because that was shown on Monday's vlog, and there's a deep dive into that one. I had a really good experience with it, and Cashmerette are geared up for the boobylicious people amongst us. Now, they do finished garment measurements on their garments, but there's never gonna be a whopping 5 inches. I've just had a look at a dress, and the difference is 2 inches, which is what I tend to use as a guide when I'm looking at pattern companies that have 5 inches of ease. I look at what the size is with 2 inches of ease and use that as my starting point. But the good thing about Cashmerette is they have an amazing sizing calculator online if you're a club member. So you feed in your accurate measurements. Again, they say do the high bust without a bra, then put your bra on and measure your full bust. Be open and honest and you'll get a good fit. So you put your measurements in, you hit the calculate button, and it tells you what size Cashmerette pattern pieces you should be using, and that's what I did for the Hazelton wrap dress, and it came out perfect. You don't have to be a club member with Cashmerette. They do have patterns that you can purchase, not as many as there are in the club side of it, but they are readily available. So their sizing comes from a C cup right up to a H cup, which is really inclusive. The size range is from a 0 up to a 32, so a good size range. Combine that with your C to H cup sizes as well, and you get my drift. It's virtually going to cover all of the boobylicious babes out there. So have a look at Cashmerette if you've not looked at them already. As I said, you could join the club down for 1 month, download the pattern that you want, and then unsubscribe. So if you went for the middle range, which means you can look back at old club patterns, I think it's about £15–16. So if you choose 2 or 3 patterns, you've saved a wedge of money there, haven't you? So it's worth looking at Cashmerette, even if you want to do it for a month. I've subscribed for a year and paid up front for 12 months because I want to give it a really good go and really work on my fit over the next 12 months. So that's a personal thing for me. And as I said, I've made 1 dress, 1 successful garment. So Cashmerette say that their garments are, the fit is designed to be as the high street, which is an interesting slant on it, isn't it? Because there's not many who will say that and commit to it, but so far so good. I agree, their sizing is as the images are that they're showing you of the garments if you choose the right size. I mean, there's pattern companies out there that, I've said this, 5 inches of ease, sometimes it's even more. You look at the garments and they're that loose and floaty, as they say. They just look like a sack. Where's the design in that? You know, anybody can do something that's like that shape and just grade it up. It's not hard. Well, I don't think it is hard. And you just sort of think, what am I paying for? I've got to work out the size myself. The sizing's miles too big. I have to downsize. I know I've never been a UK size 6 or a size 8 since I left school. So it's unrealistic. If I'm sizing down to a UK size 8, then the sizing is wrong. And they shouldn't be putting patterns out there that are that far out of kilter. Now, I know to an extent that they'll say, well, it depends on your body shape. But surely to God, if I measure my measurements, I look at their size chart and I pinpoint the size that works and I grade, it should turn out. But there's a lot of them out there that I know straight away, oh, it's such a pattern company, oh, they come out big, I'll have to go down 2 sizes. Why should we have to go down 2 sizes for a pattern that we've paid good money for that should fit as the pattern states? And they don't. Pattern company number 3 that I'm going to recommend, and I know I'm only recommending 3 pattern companies, but I don't want to recommend 5 and have 2 that I'm not 100% about. These 3 I am more than happy to recommend to you guys. And the third one is one that I've used for quite a while, and it's Maison Fauve. They are perfect. You get the size that you see. They don't do finished garment measurements, not on the patterns that I've got anyway, but you don't need them. You perhaps have to do a full bust adjustment on certain garments, but that's a personal thing. Hey, we can't help having big boobs, can we? Their block is drafted to a B cup, which a lot of them are, and that's a separate issue because how many people are actually a B cup? I don't know many. Certainly not in my sewing group. Social that I sew at. And in fact, I think next time I'm going to go round the room and ask them what cup size they are. Are they comfortable with the pattern companies and the sizing? So maybe that's a separate vlog that we can take a deeper dive into this issue with. But Maison Fauve, let's get back on track. Absolutely love, love, love Maison Fauve patterns. The only one that I had a little bit of a disappointment with was their recent free pattern, which was the mellow pants, and they came out huge. That is not what Maison Fauve are normally about. Their patterns are usually bob on. So I am going to keep them on my list, and I am going to keep buying their patterns. So Maison Fauve do not give you finished garment measurements, certainly not the patterns that I've got anyway, but I've just had a quick look on their website to double check and I couldn't see finished garment measurements on there. But I don't need them. They fit. The size that you choose fits you. Now, depending on the style of garment, I fluctuate between a 38 and a 40. If it's a top and it's a floaty top, a jacket, definitely a 38. For trousers, because of my wider waist, I would go for a 40 and perhaps grade to a 38 as I went down. But you get to know how a pattern company works for you. But their sizing and their measurements are superb. I've just had a look at the twist front dress, which is one I made recently. Absolutely love that dress. Love the detail. That's the other thing with Maison Fauve. They always have quirky details that other pattern companies don't have. And to be honest, the amount of work and attention to detail in their patterns makes them more than worth the price tag that they put on them. The only little niggle that I have with Maison Fauve is that they don't automatically release PDFs. Their patterns come in beautiful envelopes. The instruction booklet is well laid out and the pattern is great. But they're getting up to the £20 mark for one of those patterns. And sometimes I'd just rather just pay for a PDF. Particularly if it's a little top, I'd pay for the PDF and print it and stick it together myself. I wouldn't even send it for print. But if you want to do that with Maison Fauve, you've got to wait, I think, 6-12 months before they release them on PDFs. Now, that's their personal preference and I totally respect that. It doesn't stop me buying them, and if I love the pattern and I know I really want it and I want it now, then I will buy their hard copy paper patterns. As I've already said, they look beautiful, and I think I'm going to pull out my Maison Fauve patterns and just leave them on display somewhere because they're just nice to look at. So Maison Fauve don't do full bust adjustments, you have to do them yourself. And going forward, I've learnt that I need to do a full bust adjustment. So instead of, I was using a size 40 in Maison Fauve, and that was compensating for my boobs, and then I'd do a narrow shoulder adjustment, when in actual fact what I should have been doing was doing a 38 and doing a full bust adjustment. So I'm going to be working through my pattern stash of Maison Fauve, and I'm going to draft out the right bust or bodice for me, for all of them, and then when I come to use them, I've not got to start messing. I can just pull them out of the packet and use them straight away. But that's, you know, setting aside a day, 2 days just to do that. But I am going to do it at some point. So they're the 3 pattern companies I'm recommending for being accurate and reliable with their sizing. As I said, there are an awful lot of them out there who aren't accurate. We accept that they're not accurate. I'm guilty of it as much as anybody else. We say, oh well, I know I'm a size 4 or I'm a size 2 in that pattern company because their sizing is huge. What I want to say to pattern companies is your sizing shouldn't be huge. Your sizing should be correct. Work on it, and if you can't get your sizing right, quite frankly, you shouldn't be selling patterns. Now, this has been a very controversial vlog that I've wanted to do for a while. I haven't done it with any degree of negativity. My channel is all about being positive and uplifting. And I've not mentioned any pattern companies by name other than the ones that I totally recommend. Let me know below, it's entirely up to you guys. If there's pattern companies you've had a real problem with and you want to let the sewing community and everybody who watches my vlogs know about them, put them in the comments below, and then we can all help each other to get value for money from our patterns, a good fit, be confident in the size that we're cutting out is what it says in the instructions, and let's not buy patterns that have got huge amounts of ease in them, which is absolutely ridiculous and unnecessary. So I hope you found it interesting, a little bit different from me. No finished garments to show you in this vlog, but I hope you understand from this vlog we all struggle with the indie pattern companies. There's a lot of them out there. that aren't accurate on their sizing, and I feel for you. I've bought patterns, we spend good money on them, and then we don't use them. We use them once and think that does not work for me. So we need to be looking at the patterns a little bit more closely. I certainly will be looking at the ease in the garments, and if it's huge, no matter how much I love that pattern, I will not be spending my money on it. I will find an alternative that's realistic from a pattern company that I know is reliable, and I'm happy to spend my hard-earned cash on their patterns. So if you've got a pattern company that you love, that the sizing is really good, and you want to recommend to everybody and me as well, then again, put those in the comments below, and then we can get a little bit of a pattern library building up and help each other to sew amazing, well-fitted, wonderful garments. Take care and happy sewing.